Okay. So we have quorum. I'm gonna let everybody else in, and we should have good. I'm just gonna make note of board members present. Jeff, I see Devin, I see Randy. I could have saw Gretchen. There's Gretchen. Yep. And let me just see if I can find Jenny. No. Okay. All right. We are streaming live on YouTube and recording now. Excellent. Okay. Call to order this special meeting of the Easton Board of Education at 7:01 p.m. on January 25th, 2021. We're going to make a quick adjustment, not to the agenda. This is a special meeting. So in a special meeting, it's not permitted to change the agenda because of Freedom of Information Act rules. However, our bylaws and sort of the rules of how these meetings work in our bylaws, 1120A allows the chairperson at his or her discretion to curtail public discussion at any time. And so my intent is to pause public discussion for a moment and give the floor to Dr. Harrison. The next logical step in our agenda would be to go from some public comment into board member comment, at which time I think Dr. Harrison as the superintendent is invited to speak his mind. And so I'm going to put a pin in public comment for a moment, give the floor to Dr. Harrison, and then come back to public comment. With that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Harrison.
Thanks, John. So just wanted to take a moment before we jump into a discussion about the budget. Wanted to take a moment and address concerns regarding a post on my personal Facebook page following the events at the Capitol. While my intention was not to be divisive, it has become clear to me that my post has offended some members of our community, and for that, I'm truly sorry. One of our aspirational goals for our students is to build a caring community, and I want to make sure that my actions reflect that desire as well. As I mentioned in my message to our families, I am buoyed by the hope and promise that we see in our students, the partnerships that we've developed with our families, and encouraged by the opportunities that we have as educators to positively impact the world one student at a time. And so with that, I think it's just really important to make sure that I am continuing to build our positive relationships with our community members so that we can partner together to do what's right for our students. So as we go forward, I am happy to meet with any members of our community who would like to discuss further, and you can feel free to reach out to me to set that up. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Harrison. All right, returning to the agenda, I will open it up for public comment. So at this time, you can indicate using the participant window by raising your hand in the participant window, and you'll be recognized. Please remember to state your name and your street before moving on to your comments. Give folks a moment. I see Nikki. Nikki, please proceed.
Hi, Nikki Caldawi, Staples Road. I just want to say that obviously I know tonight's the first night that we're discussing, that you guys are discussing the budget. But for those people who have not been privy to this stuff in the past, it is such a brutal process, and the Board of Finance is quite brutal. It's the best way I can describe most of them. I would just say that I hope you go high. go high or go home, because our teachers deserve better, our administration deserves better, and our kids certainly deserve better. And this has been a really rough few months for everyone. And I think the town can finally step up and help out the younger generation here, as well as our teachers and staff. So thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Okay. Just looking. Looks like that is all for public comment at this time. I'll move on to board member comment.
John, I saw a Bill Bardani with a hand raised.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, they both just popped up. I see Bill and then Allison, actually. Bill. You should have a pop-up on your screen asking you to unmute. Let me try it one more time.
Can you hear me?
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Thank you, John, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak for a few minutes. Bill and Carolyn Bardani, Soundview Drive in Easton. We've got twins in 8th grade, and we've got a 7th grader at Helen Keller. I just want to start by saying, because this isn't said enough, that we genuinely appreciate the efforts of the board. We get that this is a heavy lift that you do. You've got lives, you've got careers, you've got families, but yet you're still able to commit significant time to this. And we recognize that and we appreciate it. We intended and we still intend to discuss the comments that Dr. Harrison made in his Facebook post. We found them deeply offensive. And while we appreciate that he appears to be genuinely apologetic about it, it still doesn't change the fact that it was absolutely wrong. The role of the superintendent is an extremely influential role in our school system. And given his propensity to jump to conclusions and to make gross generalizations about nearly half the community, we question whether he has the ability to remain objective on pertinent matters going forward. So we'd like to ask the board to more formally address this, put it on the agenda, take it up, and get more thoughts from the community on it. Thank you.
Allison?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to address a few items, mostly around the budget, the upcoming budget. Well, I am in favor of improving the education of our children, of giving the teachers and the administrators the tools that they require to do the job that we all want our kids to, improve. I am not for just spending money blindly. We have a very, economy that's propped up these days. We have a lot of issues that we haven't seen come through yet. We have more unemployment coming, even though we say we haven't seen it yet. We have foreclosures on the brink there, etc. So I just ask that we look and we be smart about the money we want to spend here. We want to see meaningful changes. We want to see advancement. We want to see change for each of our children, for all different levels that our kids may be in. We talk about jobs of the future. I've said it before, robotics, engineering, coding, we're lacking. If those are where the jobs are, we're not teaching it. We also have what I feel is a broken system. The costs that are increasing within the schools. I think that Mr. Zachary showed us a nice chart the other day. I've said this a year ago, 2 years ago, that we spend so much time, all of you spend so much time talking about this budget where we fight over $300,000 or $400,000 it comes down to. Last week or the last board meeting, somebody noted a director of, I think it was IT, I may have the label incorrect, but 160,000 to the tune. That adds to the pension, that adds to the salary. It's difficult to take that position away the next year if it's not working. So I ask for out of the box thinking, maybe 2 contractors. We save on the pension, we save on the health insurance, and we see if it works before we go in deep on some of these positions, on some of the things we're asking for. I think that there's also a discussion that's going to be around extracurricular activities and maybe putting that back into the budget, which I highly support. However, I also support out of the box thinking. Can the teachers take less or half of the stipend that they get? Can there be something about parents paying for what activities they want to do, a piece of it? Things like that. We have more students. We have younger families with kids. The schools are being, populated more. Before we had an older population in town. We don't have, the grand list doesn't grow because we have younger people in town. We also have no industry. That's what we all love about it here. But when you increase pensions all the time, when you increase teacher salaries because of longevity, things of these natures, increase your electric costs or gasoline prices, whatever, the system in town cannot support this. We can't raise taxes as much as costs are going up. So that's all I ask, out of the box thinking, and maybe we could really make it work this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Okay. Moving on to board member comment.
There's a gentleman named Roy Barker that has his hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry. He's waving in the video. Thank you. Thanks, Jenny. Here you go, Roy. You should be able to, there you go.
Great. Thank you. Roy Barker, 246 Morehouse Road.
Thank you. Yes.
Great. Well, I have a question for Dr. Harrison, but first I'd like to read his Facebook post. I thought I had no words, but I found a few. Trump is not the only person who should take responsibility for today's events. Please search your soul and ask for your words, ask if your words, your silence, your actions or inactions helped in any way pave the way for Confederate flags to be waved in our nation's capital. If you retweeted his foolishness, shouted lock her up, jumped on board with his Sleepy Joe narrative, countered with all lives matter, ignored the normalization of racism and sexism, co-signed unfounded conspiracy theories, or chose to stand back and stand by, don't act surprised. You are a co-conspirator who has sided with domestic terrorism. Our young people need each one of us to do better. Decency must be the first step towards being great. So my question is, Dr. Harris, based on your Facebook post, statistically speaking, there are a number of parents and students in this district that you believe are co-conspirators to domestic terrorism. How will this affect your ability to lead this district, especially as we are encouraging diversity and inclusion? Labeling people this way seems antithetical to our school's mission. Your words, our young people need each one of us to do better. Please explain how labeling people you disagree with is doing better for our children. Thank you.
Any additional public comment? Board member comment.
Sure, I can go, John, if anybody else.
Thank you, Randy.
Go.
Thank you, Randy.
Okay, sure. Let's see. You know, we as board members, we donate a fair amount of time to provide guidance and oversight. We have a CEO, the superintendent, and in turn, the CEO has a large team charged with carrying out, you know, a well-constructed plan. And then, for lack of a better term, we have the audience, which is, or who are our townspeople, who support us socially, emotionally, and financially. We need the support of the town, regardless of their political leaning. This is a reason why the board is made up equal parts Democrat and Republican. About 10 days or so ago, I reached out to my fellow board members because I felt there was a recent Facebook post published by our superintendent, Dr. Harrison, was inappropriate and divisive. I then asked my fellow board members to recommend that Rydell make a public statement regarding his post and apologize to the folks in town that were offended by his comments. Now, I guess I'll ask our policy committee to review existing policies that speak to social media and our collective staff. If we're lacking in this area, then I recommend we come up with a policy that puts guardrails around appropriate activity on social media going forward. Thanks.
Any additional board member comment? Jeff.
Thank you, John. I want to concur with Randy's thought concerning policy and social media guidelines. I know we have them for Board of Education members. It seems to me like having them for all members of the ER9 family who our towns employ should have one policy that they can look at and be comfortable with and help them to, and that will help guide their actions and their words. Thank you.
Any additional board member comment?
Devin had her hand up a minute ago. Yeah.
Devin, please.
So first, I want to thank Dr. Harrison for making a public statement around the Facebook post. I will say on January 6th, I watched in absolute horror of what was happening in the Capitol, terrified, honestly, to try to figure out how to find words to explain to my children what was happening. And, you know, regardless of how our politics or what we identify as, I think for most of us, it was a very terrifying day and a day that we, you know, saw the very foundation of our republic and the democratic ideals that we hold so true, you know, actually come very close to crumbling. And for me, it was a very emotional day and a day that, you know, in many ways, my emotions got ahead of me in some of the things I said or thought. And at that point, I'm sure if someone took what I said on a Facebook post or in a Twitter post and took it out of context, it could be misconstrued or used in a way that unfortunately could create further divide. I think it's unfortunate that, you know, on a day that we had literally a domestic terrorist event happen in one of our most sacred halls in this country, you know, that like we're not focusing on trying to move forward from that together. And I've heard Dr. Harrison now apologize 3 different times for that post. And I hope that people take him at his word. I believe his apology is sincere. And I do think it's a good idea, what Randy said, that we do think about a social media policy, just so that, again, we have for all of our, you know, folks in schools that we're, you know, thoughtful and careful about what we post in a public forum. But I will say that post was not intended to be public. And I'm sure most of us set our Facebook pages a certain way. You know, and when somebody from outside of our community is trying to attack people within our community, I think, for me anyway, I want to stand up and, you know, say that that is not right, that I think this is being used to divide us. And I hope that we can take Dr. Harrison at his word and his apology and move forward together stronger because of this.
Thank you, Devin.
Hey, John, just one more thing, unless somebody else has a comment on the board.
I think Jenny had something, but
Totally fine, Randy, go ahead.
I was just going to thank everybody that spoke up at public comment, because I think I think it's important that the community come to these meetings. I think maybe the only benefit to doing these things via Zoom is that we have a lot more participation, because we wouldn't get this many people in Helen Keller Library. So I'd like to thank everybody that spoke today already at public comment.
Jenny?
First, it's going to be a little off track and then back to the topic that everybody's mentioning right now. I just wanted to say, Clarence, thank you for your personal delivery of budget materials on Saturday. It was absolutely lovely to meet you in person. And it made me really wish for the days, like I would give anything right now for a Tuesday night in the Keller Media Center, around the tables with the name tags and the water bottles and everything. Budget season is not for the faint of heart. We talk a lot about it being a marathon, not a sprint. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little worried about the amount of time that's passed. I've just been thinking about that a lot lately. It's been so long since we have all been physically together in the same room. And I think just the distance and the space and the time can raise tensions and anxiety, even sometimes when there isn't anything to be anxious or tense about. And I see a lot of familiar faces. I just wanted to say thank you so much to our stalwart participants and supporters. And just to welcome, any new families to Easton, to the process. This is the very, very beginnings. This should be a night of open discussion and questions and back and forth. This is really the exploratory time in the budget process. Eventually we'll probably be calling on the community for your support, through emails and other activities, but we're not there yet, so, and the other thing I wanted to do was just say to encourage you to please forward questions to us via board member emails. As things come up during the meeting tonight, if you have questions or you want to make comments at the end, we want to hear from you. As much as we're trying to sort through where the priorities are, we want to hear from the community about where your priorities lie and where your concerns are. With regard to Dr. Harrison, I just wanted to make sure that the public knows that even though you may not see every sort of like a moment by moment, play by play, there have been a lot of meaningful, thorough, thoughtful conversations that have been happening regarding the Facebook post between board members, between board members and Dr. Harrison, between board members and members of the community. It has not been swept under the rug. We've been talking about it at length and trying to do it in a way that supports Dr. Harrison, but also takes into account, opinions and thoughts of the members of our community. I was not personally offended by the post, but I can see where the words may have caused division or concern. Regardless of that, I just want to say that I do not have any doubts about Dr. Harrison's ability to carry us through this budget season. I've already seen thoughtful presentations of, improvements to technology, improvements to diversity, equity, inclusion. And I think he's going to do a sound, solid job of carrying through. So as others have mentioned, as much as we can try to come together and move forward and keep our eyes on what's important, and that's our kids. If we could keep them in the main view of what our discussions are all about. It's about age 3 through age 18. And this particular board, we're thinking about our youngest learners, our babies, through our, the trials and tribulations of middle school. And if we could bring our focus back on the kids, I think we'll have a really good, productive night. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. I'll be brief. I want to say, yes, thank you to everyone who spoke up tonight. I think it's important that people speak up, participate in the public comment section. I don't agree with some of the public comments, but it's everybody's right to have their opinion. I want to say I stand with Dr. Harrison. I believe that he was making statements to a group of people. His audience was a group of friends he had for 16 years. That group. He has been in service in various districts and nothing like this has ever come up. And so why did it come up? Because Dr. Harrison, in our best interests, helping to promote our town, did a stand-up interview with News 12 in front of Samuel Staples Elementary School. And in that, he was asked, it was the day after the events in DC, he was asked, what he thought about it. And he didn't go into depth. He simply said, I had trouble sleeping last night. And someone in the audience who lives in Norwalk saw that and didn't like that. Didn't like that he would dare to say that he had trouble sleeping. And so that person went looking for something. None of us here, no one on this call is Facebook friends with Dr. Harrison. I would never have known about that post. The same way I wouldn't have known had he written it in his private diary. But we came to be aware of it. And so he's dealt with that and he's apologized. And I hope we can move on from that and get to what Jenny just said, the real point of us all being here. And that's doing the best that we possibly can for the students in our district. And we should be focused on student outcomes. And I hope that we can focus on that going forward. So with that, any additional board member comment? Okay. That takes us to discussion and possible action. Item A, approval of math curriculum resources for K through 5. Stephanie?
Yes, I'd be happy to share once again that the Easton Board of Education Curriculum Committee has had several discussions at this point regarding the selection of a new K through 5 math resource. At the last Board of Education meeting, the Board of Ed Curriculum Committee recommended to the board, provided public notice of their intent on asking for adoption of Envision as the K through 5 math textbook resource pending budget approval. So we are asking for the board to consider that and make a formal motion of that nature.
Jeff?
Do we have a cost? And was it a multi-year contract? And well, how are the finances set up for this?
John, would you like me to respond to that, or would you like to respond?
Or perhaps Clarence. I know Clarence has done some work on the multi-year side of things.
Well, I think it's a combination of what Stephanie, I proposed a structure to allow us to sort of amortize the costs over multiple years. For the benefit of the children, Stephanie, I think feels that we need at least a 3-year contract. So we had proposed paying for the contract over 2+ fiscal years. So a payment this spring before end of our current fiscal year, another payment subsequent in the summer in the next fiscal year, and then a third payment after the next fiscal year of beginning, I guess, to be 22-23. So we're basically going to spread the payments out over 3 fiscal years was our proposal.
Jeff,
And
does
the dollar figure is?
Right.
That's being negotiated. Stephanie, I don't know what the plug number you're using, but I know you're still trying to finalize. Jeff, the amount varies based on how long you have it for.
Yes, it's less than what's in the budget. I can tell you with confidence that it will not be the full amount that's represented in the budget currently.
Well, the $60,000 that is in the budget, is that the cost of the whole thing? So we're talking about 3 payments of 20, or are we talking about 3 payments of something less than 60?
The payments will not be of equal amounts. They will be the amount for next year's budget. My hunches will be probably between 40 and 50. I don't have the exact figure because we're still negotiating the exact structure of how it will be spread out over the period of time, including possibly a payment this year.
And so the upfront it's more expensive because it's covering the initial PD plus the teacher books plus the consumables for year 1.
So correct. That's correct. So different from our last contract with our last vendor, there's not an initial much larger cost because you're purchasing textbooks. Instead, because we're purchasing a subscription basically to a platform and then also consumables and professional development, the cost is structured in a manner so at the end of year 2, the district will have paid the full cost, but we will still receive the consumable resources in the 3rd year, but we won't need to pay for them. That's very different than the last contract that we had, because the contract really included the hardcover materials that were not consumables. And then every year, the buildings included in their budget request a separate figure for the consumable workbooks. So the contract that we are still drafting at this point, still negotiating, will be sort of an all-in cost. It will include the consumables, the PD, and the digital platform.
Let's make this easier. Unless we have a number, we can't vote on something, and we can't put it into this year's fiscal year unless we put it into the budget last year, or at least I wouldn't recommend that. So unless we have a number, I don't know what we can vote on to approve tonight. You can't just vote on an XX dollar amount.
Randy, I don't think there was an intent to vote on it tonight. I think the point was Stephanie originally put a plug in there while we were negotiating the terms. We had a conversation with the chairmans regarding probably trying to amortize the payments out so it's not all in this 1 year. But until those terms are accepted, we have to go with the assumption we're paying it all up front, which is what's reflected in the budget.
Okay. That I didn't know if it was that number in the budget was for 2 or 3 years. So that's helpful. If that's the gross number, it's not going to exceed that. Amortization really doesn't matter, right? We're on a cash basis. So, but I understand if they can give us terms and it's not an egregious interest rate, we'll take them. So, okay. So it's the gross number that's in the budget, which I believe is 60,000. Is that what we're voting on to approve, or are we just voting on the curriculum with a dollar amount to be determined later?
You're voting on the curriculum adoption, the resource for the curriculum. You're not voting on the dollar amount. The dollar amount part is part of your budget discussion and ultimately the budget that you recommend. So this is, you are voting in concept on the adoption of this resource in our curriculum.
Okay, then I was confused. I thought we were voting on a dollar amount too. So, okay. Well, the curriculum committee met. I mean, we talked about this last meeting. You guys think this is a much improved, both hard copy as well as electronic version of math. And it's my only concern with a conversation from several weeks ago was that it didn't appear that our surrounding areas, which doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot, but it is Fairfield or Westport or somebody else in our DIRG using it, and therefore they love it and we should adopt it. I didn't really hear that at last meeting. It seems like you all like it a lot, but it wasn't necessarily, and I don't know how many different curriculums are even employed in DIRG. Maybe there's 10, I don't know.
So I will say I work, as you know, in education, and I checked in with I happen to have a math team. And so when we were doing this research on the curriculum committee, I reached out to my math person and asked her, because she would know better than myself. And this was the one that she said is the best program, especially for K-5, because of the way that it allows students to create, work with manipulatives. It's very conceptual based. And it has a really good progression from concrete to abstract, which little kids need, right? So they build those strong foundational understandings of math, but also the virtual resource piece is really beautiful. And a program like this is just going to get better. So the good thing about virtual stuff is they can always improve it. So our teachers will have up-to-date resources as they're developing or adding things. So it gave me a really good sense that we're making a good choice for our kids going forward.
Okay, and Stephanie, I mean, that sounds good, at least K-5, 6 to 8, it's good. And what the other DIRGs are doing, or the other districts rather, in our DIRG or even DIRG B is interesting, but not necessarily relevant. Or, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to compare my neighbor's yard to my yard, but does that make sense or?
Yeah, I have the information about our DIRG and the other areas. Our colleagues in other DIRGs are not looking to make major changes in the next couple of years, at least at the elementary level, based on what I've learned at this point. Envision is being piloted in a district very close by. So I'm certainly in contact with colleagues in that district to learn a little bit more about their use. As you heard Devin share, it is well thought of in professional communities in general. As I shared at the last meeting, it's very, very highly rated in Ed Reports, which is a organization that reviews educational materials. And as the committee also knows, we started with a review of 11 different resources. And it was really quite an extensive review, much of which took place in central office. So we had, I can't tell you how many dozens of books and other materials spread across our conference room as we were looking at them. And that was even before the math specialists brought them back to their schools and shared them with other teachers to do further review. So I'm comfortable in the comprehensive nature of the review. Would it make me feel slightly better if everyone in the DIRG was also on this same bandwagon as they were when we adopted Math in Focus, many years ago? Sure, that would give a certain feeling of confidence that we were all headed in the same direction. The key difference here is that when we made the change that we did many years ago, it also went hand in hand with a change to the Common Core state standards and also a change in our instructional methodology. So you remember at that time, we also invested in a consultant from Singapore to come and provide professional development services for us. The change that we're making at this time really has to do with the resource and not our approach to teach mathematics. So as Devin described, what we believe about how students build conceptual understanding remains stable. We're not changing our instructional approach. So the PD part of it really has to do with acquainting the teachers with how to use new tools.
Okay, that's great.
So
I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
No, go ahead, Randy. No, sorry.
John's perspective, kind of in the middle of throw all the papers down the stairs. We're right in the middle of the pack, or we're low, or we're high compared to other things you looked at.
The cost you said?
Yeah.
It's actually slightly less than the other, at least one of the other top contenders.
Okay, terrific.
So Stephanie or Dr. Harrison, when this was put on the agenda, was the intent, do we have a statutory obligation to sort of vote to sort of in support of this now? Okay. All right. So not approving the budget for this, but approving this as a sort of part of our
an obligation to adopt and accept any change in a textbook. So while this isn't a textbook in the traditional sense, it is a textbook because it's our core resource.
Yep. Okay. All right. So would it be sufficient to say, and let me make sure I have the name, Math in Focus?
Envision?
That's what we had or have now. It's not what we're going to.
We don't want to approve the one that we had and we can't upgrade. Okay. Envision?
The parent company, I believe, is called Savvis.
Thank you.
John, can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely. Go ahead. I'm going to build a sample motion here in a second.
Okay. I didn't have a concern before. It's just something Devin was describing made me kind of want to ask the question. I've been concerned about, hearing people say things like, that distance learning is this giant educational leap forward, when in my view, the amount of time kids are spending on devices and all the learning that's happening on computers, it's really a step backwards. I know our teachers have gained, different skills and maybe we can address different populations, but I definitely don't want us to move forward as a district, increasing the amount of time that instruction is done on devices or Chromebooks or digitally, in that mode. So I guess my only question would be, does this program increase the amount of time that students, does it change from pen and paper to work being done on computers? Is it going to increase the time that kids are doing math on Chromebooks or math, on iPads, et cetera?
That was a great question. The adoption of this resource would not require that change at all. The digital integration has to do with the fact that assessments are a part of the package resource, and the teachers and math specialists will have the ability to download and change the assessments while the assessments stay itemized, attached to content standards. And that's a huge leap forward. So the students won't see any difference necessarily. They can still take it in a pencil paper kind of way. The analysis of the performance will really help us to inform instruction, as opposed to a product where the content specialist or the teachers would have to go item by item and then figure out how the topic is connected to a content standard. It's all part of the package. So whether the students take the assessment at a computer or they take it pencil and paper, that work has sort of happened already behind the scenes. So that's an example of the digital integration. There are resources that are available for teachers should there be a need for enrichment or reinforcement that occurs on the computer, or remote learning. So that could occur, and it would be well supported by the program. But when we are back in school in a more typical school year, there's no reason to expect that suddenly all students in all grades will be learning mathematics with a Chromebook sitting in front of them. It's not what we think would be best, frankly.
So,
I guess one other quick thing, John. Have the other boards, have you been in front of Reading with this already and they've approved it? And as far as Barlow, not relevant?
not relevant.
It's not relevant. Barlow has been informed, Region 9 has been informed of the intended changes ahead.
Great.
So the chair will entertain a motion to recommend to accept the recommendation of the curriculum committee to adopt Envision as our K-5 textbook resource. I think Jenny moved and Devin seconded. Any additional discussion?
I mean, unless, well, I guess this is a two-part approval, is it not? Because we can't approve this without the dollar amount. So we're going to have to come back and approve the dollar amount, I guess, in the budget is what you're saying, but we won't have that until you guys finish the negotiation over there. So I mean, you might caveat the motion to say, assuming we reach an acceptable financial.
I have Reading's motion, Randy, which takes that into consideration if you want me to read it.
That's
Sure.
great.
Please.
It says move, well, this Frost would say, it says move that the Easton Board of Education select Envision, a division of Savas Learning Company, LLC, as its K-5 math curriculum materials provider effective July 1st, 2021. We empower central office administrators to negotiate the most favorable contract term and pricing. That's what the Reading
That's great.
board approved.
That's great. Jenny, would you consider amending your motion?
Absolutely. Amend the motion per the wording of the Reading motion, or do I need to sort of
No, I think
read
that's
what she said?
I think that's per Gretchen's statement. And Devin, are you seconding again?
Yes, I am.
Very good. Okay. Any additional discussion? All right. Seeing none, we'll call the question. Jeff?
Yes.
Thank you. Devin?
Yes.
Thank you, Randy.
Yes.
Gretchen?
Yes.
And Jenny?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I vote yes. Passes 6-0. All right. That takes us to our next item, B, the non-lapsing accounts for Easton and Reading. Clarence, I'm Yes.
You can take Reading off that. We found that Reading has already approved this, apparently passed, or given their chairman authority to negotiate directly with the Board of Finance. So it's just Easton. For the board members who don't know, let's see, it's 2001, so approximately 6 years ago, the state legislature passed a law that allowed boards of education to create what's called a non-lapsing account, where the boards at that time could contribute up to 1% of their total budget to this non-lapsing account. As of 2020, that increased to 2%. What boards use this non-lapse account is for capital expenditures, maintenance projects, health insurance costs, or any extraordinary special education expenses. So what happens at the end of the year, if you have some monies left over that weren't expended, you can contribute to this non-lapse account up to 2% of your total budget. It provides some flexibility for the district to deal with unforeseen expenditures, whether it be healthcare or special education costs. But in order to do this, you have to, Board of Ed has to approve it, then the Board of Finance has to approve it, and then you negotiate terms. And I included so typical language. You see a lot of districts have adopted it since 2015. So I'm requesting that we follow suit.
Everyone has the language in front of them?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just for the benefit of the public here.
So, Mr. Chair, if anyone has any questions, I can hopefully try to attempt to answer them.
Certainly. Any discussion on this item? I think we would be looking for similar motions to what was passed in Reading. I think this was back in May of 2020, which is a motion for the chair to negotiate terms with the Board of Finance. There's no guarantee that they're going to be on board with it, but it would be essentially authorizing a conversation with the Board of Finance. I know that Clarence and Rydell have already started some conversations with the chair of the Board of Finance about this. And I think the hope would be that we can continue. But first, are we supportive of this? As a board, do we think this is a good idea?
John?
Yes.
This is an excellent idea. It is something that has been discussed in the past with the Board of Finance. They have not embraced it, but that was yesterday and today is today. So I think we should move as quickly as we can forward on this. It'd be a great help to the board moving forward in terms of the financial battles that we have, that if there was a non-lapsing account that we could pull from. And the non-lapsing account, I think the rules are, and Clarence, tell me if I'm wrong, but it's a 2% of your budget. And for us, that'd be $340,000. And that would be a lot of money in our world to be able to use at our discretion. And it's only for educational purposes, by the way. That's part of the language in the bill.
Mr. Parker, you're correct. It's 2% of that year's budget. So whatever your budget is, it's 2% of that year's budget.
And Clarence, how does it roll? Let's say, we put 2% in, and then 2 years down the road, is that 340, figuratively speaking, still sitting there?
Randy, it literally does not lapse. It stays there until you use it. So if you would want to build up reserve for healthcare, you can keep adding to it and not use it, but it doesn't lapse. So it means it stays there until the board decides for whatever educational purposes, whether it be an extraordinary special education cost, a capital project, healthcare, whatever. That's the whole point of it. Because under the previous to this, the law was if there's any funds left over, you had to give it back to the town. And you couldn't run a deficit, and you couldn't run a surplus. So this gives the sort of wiggle room for boards of ed to deal with these sort of unexpected things. So it literally will not lapse. You'll use it, and once you've used it, then it's gone. And then if you add more each year, it builds up. So you had a big capital project, how you could sort of build up a way to fund a capital project that maybe the town didn't want to fund through a bonding process. Or we're self-insured. We have a bad claims year. Instead of running to the town, we can have a reserve of funds that we could turn to deal with a bad claims year in a health insurance.
And let's say it starts at 340, and then the next year could you put another 100 in there and then 100 each year? So it becomes, or is it always capped at 2% of that year's budget?
It's 2%, it's maximum of 2% of that year's budget. You could put less. You may not have 2% to contribute. It's just a max of 2%.
Okay. Okay.
So, sorry, just for clarification, the PDF specifically says 1%.
It's old. It's been in as in 2020.
2015.
It was revised.
It was revised in 2020 to 2%.
Yep.
And who invests the money, so to speak, or where does it go?
It sits in a bank account. It doesn't, now you as a board and the Board of Finance can negotiate what you do with it, but you need to be somewhat liquid. So you all can make a decision about, whether you put it in some, treasuries or something, but it needs to be liquid in order to get to it. You're not going to put anything risky profile. It needs something, obviously we know what the returns on money market funds are these days, but you just have some sort of liquidity opportunities to get access to the money. And I think that would be part of the conversation between the chairman and the Board of Finance about, transparency, seeing the uses, and what and other districts I've had. We basically say, look, here's our bank statements. We, it's like we report our audit our statements for our operating fund. The same thing would happen. It's another fund. It basically becomes another fund.
Okay.
And Randy, to that point, when I worked on this in another district, we were specifically designating those funds for kind of small capital improvement projects that we were planning out over a 5-year period. And that was written into the parameters of the non-lapsing account. And so there was in the proposal, there was an agreement on those terms with the town council, or in this case, it would be with the Board of Finance, so that there's that level of transparency as well. And it's really clear what those funds are to be used for.
Yeah. And Region 9 does it because they're their own, chief and bottle collector over there. So they get to cover both sides of the equation. So, okay. Yeah. I mean, let's try it. Good luck, John.
Thanks, Randy.
Yeah, I love this idea. I loved it when Jeff threw it out last year at the Board of Finance. And I think when you think about kind of some of the expenses that potentially could come up that are unknown, it gives the Board of Ed some flexibility. Like there's an extra, one year we had those surplus healthcare expenses, like we don't have to go back to the town to fund them. I think, if there's an emergency in the gym floor, we have capital funds there sitting. To me, the town has already approved this money for education through the vote. So it makes sense to be able to hold some of that if we have extra dollars and be able to use it in education. So I think this is a great ask. And I also wish you luck, just like Randy.
John, Mr. Chairman, I have some data on, there's a plethora of towns in Connecticut that have done this. So we wouldn't be like the first adapters. We're a little sort of late to the party. So
right,
that may assuage their concerns.
Okay.
John, just a quick comment. I'm absolutely all for it, in support of the concept. I have a hard time envisioning acceptance of it on the other side. Yep. And I'm a little bit concerned about how it will just sort of affect the dynamics of the budget interactions. I would be concerned that, if money builds up in there, although, we're being responsible and proactive and it would prevent, issues of returning to the town, that it might start to be factored into the equation and actually deliver lower percentages. Yeah. I can see Board of Finance members looking at that amount and saying, okay, well, you asked for 3%, but they see that number in this account and give us less of an overall budget for the year.
I think you're spot on. That's definitely a concern we need to be mindful of, and the unintended consequences. However, I definitely like the idea that that we try this, and that we're not the first movers on this. That other towns have tried it, and we can learn from their mistakes, and look at sort of really do a study of what has happened with these, how people structured this, and where has it worked, and where hasn't it worked, and make sure that we don't repeat their errors. Yeah. Okay.
And good luck.
All right. So Chair will entertain a motion to authorize the chair to engage the Board of Finance in discussions about a non-lapsing account.
So moved.
Thank you, Jeff. Jenny, second. Thank you. Any additional discussion? Okay, call the question. And I think I can see everybody right now. So if we just raise hands, all in favor? Aye. I see Jeff, Randy, Gretchen, Jenny, and Devin. Very good. Thank you, everyone. Passes 6-0. All right, that takes us to our final item in discussion and possible action, 2021-22 budget review. This will only take a moment, right? All right. All right. So, Dr. Harrison, I assume you have some presentation that you'd like to make as well. Before we jump into that, I would like to just do a quick reminder and share with everyone the process. Bear with me while I share my screen here. So we started this process back in December, and this is, I think in the 2020-2021 year, we started heading down the path of doing this process. This was something that Jeff wanted to try to get everybody sort of behind this idea of, let's talk about these items first and then move on to this block of conversations and sort of plot out the timeline. And so I think we sort of continue with roughly the same pattern that we did last year. That is, in December, we started talking about this. We started discussing the budgets, and it was all about the sort of contracts and healthcare conversation. I'm going to go to presentation mode so this is full screen. That includes our contracts with the administrators and educators, the custodial staff, non-certified. It's our food services and our transportation. It's sort of all of those pieces where we have a contract that dictates what we're going to spend. It also includes large chunks of sort of known quantities from the employee healthcare side of the equation. And that accounts for a massive percentage of the overall budget that we pass each year. And I think Mr. Zachary did a really good job in the last time that we met a couple of weeks ago, talking specifically about the percentage that comes out of that. We're now here in our sort of workshop in January, and we're here to focus specifically on the positions and programs. So talking about teacher ratios, talking about the sort of how the work that we're doing now helps us strategically to invest in the things we need for the next 3 and 5 years, talking about our enrollment projections, where we see those coming in and how that impacts us, and certainly evaluating sort of either the creation or the continuation of special programs that are sort of being designed or run to help us curtail costs. What we would see beyond that, and I think, Nikki Kaldawi sort of talked early on in public comment about, the importance of public participation in all this. And I think we had, sort of, a sort of echoing of that in some of the board member comments about the need for the public to participate in this part of the process. So we'll have public comment at the end tonight. We have a tri-board meeting tomorrow. We have two budget meetings. We'll have a regular meeting and a budget workshop in early February. And all of that will be about putting these puzzle pieces together, putting together the contracts and the healthcare and the positions and programs and all of those things. But we need to hear from you if you want to make sure that your voice is heard about the student-teacher ratios, if you want to make sure you're heard about STEM, if you want to make sure you're heard about where we're investing that money. This is it. It has been my experience in the past where we are having some very difficult conversations in March or April about things that we're going to have to cut because we've had the conversation, we've gone to the Board of Finance, we haven't made the case for X, Y, or Z, and now we're looking at cutting. And at those meetings, we had hundreds of people showing up, but at these meetings, we had 2 or 3. It's great that because of Zoom, we have such a large number of people that had been participating in this. And so we are here to ask you, please continue to show up and make sure that your voice is heard. So public comment, emails to all of us. We are very interested in hearing about your priorities as it comes to this part. This is where a ton of the heavy lifting is done. So with that, I will stop my share. Dr. Harrison, do you have some sort of transitional discussion items as we move into the detailed, or does anyone else on the board or anyone have questions for me on the board about the process I just laid out? Okay. All right, Dr. Harrison.
So, John, you stole my thunder a little bit. I was really going to start by just walking us back through the process. How did we get to where we are now? So we spent the last meeting talking about positions and programs, and it just really makes sense. There was limited discussion there. That was mostly clarifying questions and comments. It makes sense for us to talk about potential new position adds because that is the most significant piece of the budget, and particularly when we're looking at those budget drivers. So really, and we've already received a number of questions from board members that we're working today to gather answers to as part of tonight's discussion. I'm actually going to toss it over to Clarence just for a second, and really just to provide some context. So one of the things that we've been looking at, we talk about sort of status quo. If we did nothing, where would we be, just based on the contractual increases that we talked about in some of the earlier meetings, digging into what does that look like then with the contractual increases plus our obligations around SPED. And really, so we thought that tonight would be a good opportunity to sort of dig into those pieces and get that next layer of discussion happening. So going from that high level, so here's the broad picture and how that connects to our aspirational goals, and now digging in and really getting down to the dollars and cents.
Mr. Chairman, do you mind if I can share my screen? All right, so I don't know if you all will be able to see this. It may be too small. If it is, let me know. Can you all see that?
Yeah, yep.
It says Easton FY 21-22.
Yes.
All right, so I'm gonna sort of aggregate some questions we got and try to answer a couple at the same time. So I'm just gonna lead to, this is sort of a little cheat sheet. So we start off the top. We are showing our budget for this year is the adjusted 17 million and change. What we give, the documents we've given you so far of our initial proposal was the 18-1. I don't know if you recall, we told you that was just an initial proposal. Well, we didn't cut anything out because we want to have sort of an iterative process to discuss what should or shouldn't be in. And I think Mr. Parker asked me last week or so about what the actual increase number. So Jeff, I told you it was 6.4, so we'll be precise, 6.39. So that's what's in the budget I brought to you all last weekend, but I wanted to sort of break down some key components of that. We had several questions about what if we didn't add new positions. So just below, you see where it says salary certified. What I'm going to show you here is what's in the budget is for our certified. What's in the budget right now is the 7.7 million is for this year and a proposed 8.2 for next year. And that's an increase of 555,000 and change, or 7.19%. Just below that, I break it out between what's existing and what's new. So that 7.19%, 4.63% of that is status quo, meaning someone's on staff, we're paying them now, and they're here next year. The additional 5.7%, or 198,000, is the new positions. So the new positions add approximately $200,000 to the salary line, and that's just certified. Go below, we'll see non-certified. So you got additional rounding here, $25,000 for existing, and an additional $45,000 in new. That gives you a combined of new positions of almost $245,000 that's in that budget that we propose to you. What I wanted to show just below is sort of as we add layers onto it. So you see where it says last year plus contractual salary increases. So this is showing if we increase nothing else in the budget but our contractual salary increases. If we do that, we're adding $382,000 in change, which is a 2.25% increase. So just salaries alone, the budget goes up 2.25. We had another layer of the SPED tuition increases. We've got additional 175,000 SPED tuition increases. We add that layer on, it jumps up to 3.28%. Next line, we add transportation. There's it's approximately $20,000 increase in transportation, which is contractual. It's just under, it's 1.95%. If you add that 20,000 on, you're up to 3.39%. Last layer, if we add the curriculum increases, this includes the math program, the plug number for the math program we talked about, and the DEI material that you all approved last year. That gets up to just those items alone at a 3.87% increase. And that excludes the new positions, that excludes other things that we have increases in requests for us. The point, if you recall from our last meeting, we talked about sort of things that are sort of baked in. This is sort of showing sort of layering of how, if things are baked in, what we're looking at. And then we may have to decide that some of those things we can't do, but the sped tuition and the transportation really don't have much say in that matter. So I just wanted to show you, and just below, you'll see the actual dollar amounts. In the budget, you'll see the $382,000 of contractual salary increases, $175,000 for sped tuition increases, $20,000 for transportation increase, and $80,000 in change for curriculum. And mind you, that $60,000 at 80 is the plug number. So that will go down if we can amortize that cost like we talked earlier in the evening. But what's in there now is the $60,000. So just so you can just sort of see sort of how we get up to that sort of 6.39, we've essentially counted for more than 50% of that between contractual salary increases, sped tuition increases, transportation, and curriculum. You've accounted for almost 4% of the 6.39% of increase that you have in the budget we share with you. So some of you had asked various questions along those lines. So I just wanted to put that out there and then, get some responses from you, and then we'll go further, dig in deeper. So I'm assuming Mr. Parker and Randy will have a question. So I'm going to let them chime in at this point.
Give me a second.
Well, I can jump in then. So Clarence, the salary certified status quo variance is 357,000 on line 13, right?
Yep.
And then below, contractual salary increase. Okay, so that includes non-certified?
Yes. So you've got the contractual includes non-certified plus certified, because we have a contractual obligation.
But I don't understand how certified is going up 4.5%. I'm pretty sure the teachers aren't getting a 4.5% raise, and I know the administrators aren't getting a 4.5% raise.
Randy, it includes step increases, journal wage increases, and the stipends and things, and summer duties. Anything we pay in salary, it's all rolled into that.
Yeah, but even with steps, it's not 4.5, 4.6.
Well,
it never has been. Let's put it that way.
No, Randy, that's not 4.6 of the total budget. It's the 4.6 of the 7% increase for salary.
Okay.
I think our increase last year was a little over $300,000 for just status quo. So the 4.63 is based upon the change from where we are to 8,087,068.
Yeah, so if you look down below where it says last year plus contractual salary increases, it's based to Randy, what you're getting, it's a 2.25% increase for salaries.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I wasn't sure what your denominator was to get to the 4.6.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just showing the breakout of the 7% for overall salaries, the 4.6.
Okay, so 4.6 and 2.5 is your 7.1. Okay.
Exactly.
All right, Clarence, the last four numbers at the bottom of the page, the 382, 175, et cetera, that's 658,341.
It is 658,341.
I should have bought a lotto ticket. But the variance is $1 million. That's another 300,000, and the new positions are only 200,000. So
correct.
Where's the other 100,000 coming from?
Various other increases. Also, you got to remember, we have until the meeting tomorrow, we haven't talked about healthcare. So I was just trying to show you the drivers. So there are other increases, but I was just trying to show you that some of the things that are somewhat non-negotiable get you to a certain starting point that you need to sort of figure out what you're going to do after that.
Well, you have to add in there the additional headcount, Jeff, as well. That's not in the 658.
No, it's not. So if you do the 658 plus the new head count,
You're at 900 and then you got another 180. So, yeah.
yeah, you're at 903.
Yep.
And that's with no increase in healthcare insurance, which frankly I think is going to be okay. And
Yes,
then, sir.
Yeah, that's correct. Because tomorrow's meeting with the tri-board, you'd be making some decisions whether what you're going to budget for healthcare.
Right. And then, well, Brown and Brown is going to make a recommendation,
Right.
correct?
Yeah, I don't know that we're going to bottom out on a decision.
Okay. All right. Very good. And then how much of the central office does this include? Is this central office times 2%?
Central office is an increase of $46,000 over this year. And that will probably go down based on some discussions we had last week. So what was originally budgeted is a $46,000 increase, but that may go down. In part, the majority of that is driven by the Director for Digital Learning position. So which may or may not make it, so that the majority of that increase is tied to that.
Is the 46,000 Easton's portion of that, or is that divided? That's Easton's portion.
Yep. Okay. So to Randy's point, Jeff, if you combine those four numbers at the bottom plus the new positions, you're at 900,000, which represents
5.5%.
83% of the increase.
Yeah.
So my point
of the increase, right?
Yeah. So that my point is, you're asking where's the rest of it. You've accounted for 83% of it between salaries, sped tuition increase, transportation, and curriculum increases.
Yeah, that's 5.3% compared to the 6.4%.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
So the point of this was just sort of give you an idea, like there's specific things that are driving it. And I just wanted to illuminate those things for you. So you want to have some discussions about those individual FTE, new FTEs, whatever, we can do that. But I just want so you can sort of frame the topic so you can sort of see what's sort of driving that number.
Yep. No, I don't like the numbers, but I do, but I can understand the presentation. So therefore, thank you. I wouldn't want to say thank you to $1 million increase. I'd have to go.
I'm just the messenger, Jeff. I deliver the message.
I hear it. I know. I get it. I get it.
This is a great page, Clarence. If you can, I don't need all the other tabs or all the formulas, but just a cut and paste and an email out to the board members.
Ready to go, Randy, because something told me you were going to ask for it.
Yeah, I would almost think of this as a cover page, right? In the final budget book binders that we create, I think a cover page like this that's broken out with maybe a pie chart would be helpful.
Yep.
Clarence, do you want to take us through with detail the new salaried certified that make up the 198 and the new salary non-certified that make up the 46?
Can you see this page?
Asking you shall receive.
Can we have this one too?
Yep. Once again, it's ready to go. Once we get off the call, send it right off to you. So you've got a new fourth grade teacher. I'll be perfectly honest, when Kim first proposed it, I just said no, but then I had to learn about our community's value about classroom sizes. And once I was educated on that, I quickly put it back in. We have a library media specialist and then the 0.5 social worker. So let me take this out. So you get a total of certified of 2.5. You'll ask the question, why is there longevity for a new 0.5? The person's already here. We're just increasing them from a 0.5 to a 1.0, which means the other half of the longevity kicks in. So you'll see there's a 198 in salary, but the total is 199 when you actually factor in the 987. So Randy, that's why I say when you get these other payments like longevity and steps, it all sort of flows up in the salary.
Yep.
Now, what's not here, it's not in the budget, it's a possible kindergarten teacher depending on enrollment. So I have that there just so you know, it's a placeholder. If enrollment indicates we need, obviously we don't know what kindergarten is going to be like in January, but that would be another $52,000 approximately in salary. And the non-certified, you got a PE paraeducator and a basis behavior tech for another 45 and change. And that same thing about the kindergarten. If there's a kindergarten teacher, you need a kindergarten assistant, which is another 10.6.
Right.
I've highlighted those in red, so you know, and separate them, so you'll know that they're different than what's in the budget.
Okay.
And
Randy, the hourly rate and the hours per day is there, so you'll wonder how we got to that number.
Clarence, I know there was some talk about engaging a sort of second opinion on the projections for kindergarten.
That's on tomorrow's agenda for the
Yeah.
tri-board, because I need
Good.
you all to make a vote on that. And I'm ready to go, but I need, you know,
Good.
I need just sort of a thumbs up to do that. So that's the FTEs, and that's how we get to sort of that new number. You've got the 2.5 of the certified and the 2 positions of the non-certified.
I know Kim sent a table earlier that outlined that I think she wanted to present. Since we're sort of on the topic of this, I wonder if it makes sense for us to jump into
Sure,
that.
I'll stop sharing and let Kim take over. It's all yours, Kim.
There you are. Kim, are you there?
Kim, this is my favorite chart.
Can't talk. There we go. You're a co-host again. Somehow you got unco-hosted.
Wow.
There you go.
Getting talking power in this group is pretty tough. Yeah, this is the exact chart I show every year. Every single time we have a student who enrolls after we've approved the budget, and every time we have a student withdraw, we keep it updated. So the upper left-hand corner is the current enrollment as of January 25th, which is today. You can see the number of sections and the class size. What I'd like you to look at is grade 3, because I'm proposing an additional 4th grade. So in grade 3, there are 5 sections with 3 18s and 2 19s. Then I'd like you to look immediately to the right. I keep track of, this is the enrollment number that we were thinking we were going to get. Then the year moves forward, and I track how many additional kids we've received, how many withdrawals. And anytime it ends up that we are more, I highlight it in yellow. 4th grade, there was a big gap here that we had more withdrawals than we had additions. But for the last few years, we've had more 4th graders who've joined us in the middle of the year. If you look down below, I break it out into 4 sections, 5 sections, 6 sections, so that you can see. And in next year, right, 3rd grade, we currently have 92. So I have here at grade 4, 92. Prouda thinks we're going to get 96. I break it out into 4 sections, which we currently have, and that's just too many. I break it out into 5 sections, which is what I'm requesting, and I break it out into 6 sections. The only other thing I wanted to talk about was kindergarten. Mm-hmm. Dr. Prouda is projecting that we're going to get 108 kindergartners, but I haven't had that many kindergartners. I think at Helen Keller, her 6th, 7th, and 8th grade are 100 plus, maybe 101, somewhere in there. But I really haven't had 100 kindergartners in quite some time. So I actually think that number's pretty high. But I did it the same way. I blew it out into 5 sections, 6 sections, and 7 sections. I sent a letter out to, I think they call it the Easton patch, sent a letter to our parents. If anybody knows of a child who is eligible for kindergarten for next fall, to please contact Samuel Staples. We've even called the directors of the largest preschools in our area, including our own. Right now, as I speak to you, we have a potential of 60. Now, that doesn't mean that's a hard and fast number. It's those people who wish to reach out to me or to the school. But right now it's looking like 60.
And where were you a year ago this time, Kim? Not physically, but I mean, as count as kindergartners.
It is always really low in January. There are so many families that really wait, mostly parents of boys who are born September, October, November, December. They really do wait. The other interesting phenomenon that's unique to this year is because of the pandemic, there were several kindergarten parents who said, no, for the very first year of public school, we're not going to do it this year. We'll wait, we'll do it the following year and have them enjoy a normal year. So I don't think 60 is a real number. But I also know that where we are right now is not a fair marker for me to say with any kind of certainty. So I'm requesting 5 sections.
Kim, does that 60 include the folks who held their kids out this year?
I don't know for certain. I know it includes the preschools who we've spoke with and the parents who've reached out to us.
Easton, okay.
When does this start?
Sorry.
Go ahead, Jenny.
Thank you for sending out the additional information. Just by the way, as far as the class sections go, that was really helpful to see.
Sure.
Does this kind of for us and for the public, I'm thinking also about kindergartners who, withdrew for this year, possibly are homeschooling for the year, like you said, delayed, but may re-enter not in kindergarten, but have skipped the year, but re-enter as first graders. Mm-hmm. Next year, does the first grade number account for the kids returning who pulled out for this year?
I did not think about that until you just said it. So Jenny, I'm going to have to go back and look at the kindergartners that we anticipated, who we later learned were not going to come this year, and see if that changes the first grade projection markedly.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't expect it to be a huge number, but still sometimes a handful of kids can bump us over the threshold from, needing 4 to 5 teachers or 5 to 6 teachers.
Right.
Sure. And
do you also expect like first grade, any kids that are currently in kindergarten to stay another year maybe? That are, kids who are struggling?
At present, I only know of one student in kindergarten who they're thinking about retention.
Okay.
And Clarence, when we are talking tomorrow night, I think that's something. If that concept that Jenny just raised hasn't already come up in Reading, it should be good for them to think about that. And if we're thinking about someone who's giving us a second opinion for these projections, I'm hoping they're coming with some science behind that.
They have a science about methodology. What they're not. We're talking about their methodology and.
Yep.
One thing I'll say, Dr. Prada tends to just focus on birth rates. They go beyond that. So that's one reason why I want a second opinion, because birth rates doesn't really help us right now.
Well, and especially in sort of COVID land, where there are variables that we haven't accounted for in the past.
Correct.
Kim, I think I asked this question of you once before. Did Prada's 108, this was all pre-pandemic, correct?
I don't know for certain. We get it in November. I think they retained in his services in September. Dr. Harrison or Clarence could probably tell you.
I think that this is post-pandemic. I don't know how much it takes into account the fact that we're in a pandemic. And to Clarence's point, I mean, he's still using birth rates really as the driver.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
And what we go through this every year. You think I could remember from year to year, but Kim, so you won't have will you have a much better idea in 2 months on this or not really?
I'm going to say not really.
Because
It is really the hardest number to try to project. The only thing I feel more confident saying is I don't think 108 is a realistic number. But I will keep posting an update. I'll share it with Dr. Harrison. And when he thinks that it's a noteworthy number, maybe we could share it at a Board of Ed meeting. But I mean, my coming back to you every month and saying, it's still 60.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, yeah, okay. I mean, obviously, if it ends up being 67, we don't need 5 sections because. But same token, it's hard to make any estimations at this point based on your past experience. But yeah, I don't think 60 makes sense, and 108 probably doesn't either.
Right.
It would be nice, but I don't think it does. So
Even if he's
Do
off,
we have a sense of how many kids have moved into town? Because I know that our book sales are way up. Is that maybe impacting that number?
Impacting which number, Devin?
Outer number?
108?
Sorry, the 108.
I actually don't think Dr. Prouda looked at real estate.
No, he does not. That's not part of
Okay.
the methodology.
It's
Right.
just birth rate. Okay.
Which is a part of going and getting another opinion.
But your point
Even
is
if it's off-
well made. We have had an incredible number of kids moving in the last 3 months. Has been staggering.
yeah.
I was
Where
just
did you-
trying to say, even if he's off by 10 or 12,
Right.
it still supports 5, and I'd be more comfortable with 6. I mean, even if you shave off 10, you're still close to 10 kids. You're still close to 20 per class in kindergarten.
Mhm.
And to get us to that sweet spot where we've pretty much hung our hats on for several years now, you'd need to go up to 6 sections to get it, especially given COVID, given distance learning. I mean, we want to give our youngest K-1-2 the best possible scenario, to get a good sound foundation moving forward after all this.
Right.
Well, we'll know more in May, but thank you for this. This is
Okay.
excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, the truth of it is we never know at this time of the year,
Right.
and it'll be May, and then Kim is very diligent about doing an all call, picking up the phone and calling every parent that's got a big wheel out in front of their house and asking, do you have a child, and will they be coming to Samuel Staples
Right.
this coming fall? So, okay, thanks for this, Kim.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, I've emailed that file to the board. So
Thank
check
you.
emails.
Thank you very much. All right. Clarence, do you want to pick up from sort of where we were, sort of diving into a section, or do we want to dive into more of the questions?
I would say dive more questions. I just want to show you that as an overview because it affected some of the questions I had received. So now I'm sort of at your pleasure about where you want to go with the conversation.
Okay. So Jeff or Randy, I know you had a pretty long list of questions, and there was a fair amount of sort of overlap between the questions that you had submitted. Do you want to go through and maybe we go through in turn and sort of go through each one of the questions that have yet to be answered?
Fine with me.
Okay.
Would like to have the gross and net cost of COVID that we've spent so far broken out for this year, because I think some of we can take some of the pressure off of next year by taking funds that that we don't spend this year, and so long as we don't put it toward personnel, which is not not legal. There may be some of the things that have been listed that we could invest that money in
Mr. Parker, as of last week,
Mhm.
we had a gross amount that we filed with the state of 87,302. The state has confirmed they're going to reimburse that 100%. So the net amount will be zero once we get the check. We had some additional expenditures of the minimus amount in the last few days, but nothing significant. But I also can forward that to you, the detail, what we filed with the state. I'll forward that to the board this evening also. That they approved the 87,302, which we filed, that we've been tracking under a certain budget code for we called it reopening expenses.
That's tremendous news. Where are we with the first student and the cleaning of the buses? That was a $60,000 expense.
That's included in the detail. Hold on, I can tell you exactly. The first student portion.
I guess I want to know, have they sent us a bill yet for that, or?
No, sir, they have not.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is what we've got bills for. This is what we filed with the state, and as we get more bills, we'll, file additional claims. But so far, like I said, we filed 87,302, and the state has signed off on that expenditure.
And I'm sorry, just before we leave the topic of the bus cleaning, I know that a member of the community, I think Carolyn, I think, had asked about the bus cleaning. Can you just briefly, Clarence, detail sort of what we're doing there?
So typically buses are not, the seats aren't sprayed and wiped down, but in the new COVID world, that's an added expense. So most districts have contracted with their bus vendors to spray and wipe down and disinfect like we were doing on our desk probably back in the spring. They're doing the same thing on the seats. So when the bus come in overnight, they go in, spray, disinfect it, and wipe the seats down, and then let it dry off, and then ready to go for the next morning.
Okay.
Okay. The district special ed expense I think it's under the title of possible outplacements, is $260K. We added a bridges program last year to stem that tide. If it's not working, then do we still need the bridges program?
Jen? Yes, please. Thank you.
Jeff, the money that you're referring to, the 260K, was part of it was allocated for Helen Keller and the other was for Staples.
Right. 195 for Keller and 65 for.
So basically what we have is parents have the right to withdraw their students and unilaterally place them if they feel that the district did not have the appropriate program for their child. They have up until 3 years to come back to the district and say, we want you to cover, the expenses that we've incurred by unilaterally placing our student. We have several students at the Helen Keller level that have been unilaterally placed. So what we've done is I put the tuition for the schools that those students attend in the event that they should come back to us and say, you know what, we are going to file a due process. So that really accounts for some of the money that you find in that budget code.
Well, when we went through the PPT with that family, did we feel that we had a suitable program to meet the child's needs?
Well, without getting into specific names, often,
I don't want names.
I'm not giving you names, and I even have to be careful with the profiles that I give. So basically what happens is some of the parents do share with us at PPT meetings that they disagree with the PPT's recommendation. They may say, we hear what you've said, you proposed your program, we disagree with it. Other families, they just give us a letter that says, this is the decision we made, but we reserve the right to come back.
Okay, but I'm still trying to figure out where we owe for outplacement expense when we have not agreed to their leaving. They have a right to ask for a separate evaluation. I know we have money in the budget to do that. If they haven't gone down that road, I guess I'm not quite sure why we should have $250,000 set aside for that.
They do have the right to ask for additional evaluation, but they also have the right to say, we just want you to pay for the placement. And most often we say, we don't agree with you because we have a program for your child, whether in structured literacy, whether it be in a program like Junior Bridge, or whether it be in a program like Basis. We often say we can meet your child's needs, and then the parent will pursue the legal route and the legal avenue. The money that's been put in there reflects for some of those families how many years the child's been out and how many years you're on the hook for. So for example, they put me on notice year one. That's all they have to do is to say we seek the right to ask for tuition. Now we could remove that. We can remove that, and that can be a gamble. And then what I can do is I can come back and say, if they come back to us, then I will have to come back to the board and say, we either have a settlement or we have to go to due process.
Okay.
Do we have a sense of in here? So Jeff, the issue is the parents have a right for what we call a unilateral placement. They can just place their child and we're on the hook for the bill. To Jen's point, if you take it out, it would scream loud and clear the need for that non-lapsing account we spoke about earlier, because if you take it out of the budget, you need a reserve of funds ready to go when that parent shows a bill, because when the bill gets handed to us, we have no discretion. It's about, we can litigate and mitigate, we can have mediation, but at the end of the day, the burden of proof is on the district instead of being on the parent. So it's a high burden for us. So Jen's being concerned by putting the budget. If you take it out of the budget, we need to have a place to secure that money. Otherwise, we're going to be in a world of trouble when those bills come due.
And I also want to make it clear, Mr. Parker, that if we did not have the bridge program, we would actually be looking to outplace additional students. So when I look at the current enrollment of the bridge program, and I look at future PPT meetings that we're having, I would probably have to budget for at least another, I would say between 3 and 5 students to be outplaced if we did not have that bridge program.
Okay. Well, now that I understand that what the 260 is for, I think it's a lot of money, and I think that and I don't argue that parents have the right to do whatever they want to do. I don't think that means that the district is on the hook for that. If a family makes a decision that they want to take their child and go someplace else, perfectly fine, understand it. But to expect the school district to pick up the tab when we can provide a program for the child, then you're right. It ends up in mediation or in litigation, due process. You're right. Okay. These are building questions, and I'll try to go fast. How many adults are now supervising the cafeteria at Helen Keller? In code 114, it looks like there's a teacher at $25 a lunch period. There's a full-time supervisor, and then in section 137, there's a new part-time supervisor who's getting paid more than the full-time person by about $3,000. So it looks to me like there's 3 adults in the cafeteria for every meal. Am I reading that right in the budget book?
I'm not sure how it's depicted in the budget book, but we have 1 full-time cafeteria supervisor.
Right.
You may recall a few months ago, I think in the summer, the board approved for 90 days of school some additional daily subs or part-time daily subs for us for supervision. And so we're using 2 cafeterias, so to speak, right now as we're full in, and we have people in each location. So there's 2 people in each location, and then we pull some resources to supervise outside when the kids go outside.
So if this is the budget for next year, are we expecting to have the same COVID issues and problems and challenges that we have right now?
No, in the budget for next year, we only budgeted the same one supervisor and plan to offer that stipend, the daily pay for teachers who take the duty.
Okay, well then.
Mr. Parker?
Yes, sir.
One thing I think part of the confusion may be is in the verbiage doesn't flow. Some of the verbiage go into different lines. That's one of the issues that eFinance is having in the Coggles report. So you're reading it like a normal person would read it in sequential order, and some of those verbiages go in different places. That's what the issue they're trying to resolve. So
Okay.
It may be confusing. You may be thinking it's associated with one thing. I'm not saying that's what the case is, but that may be the case. So we may have to sort of drill down and get very specific about the verbiage that you're reading.
Okay. Section 736, we have an $8,340 expense for Chromebooks. I think it's to 30 new Chromebooks to replace old ones. I thought we got hundreds of Chromebooks as part of the state's COVID relief package.
Yeah, I could explain our inventory on Chromebooks for you. We received 135 new devices as a result of the 3 state grants that went through this year during COVID. So that brings us to a total at the moment that exceeds what we're going to have at the beginning of next year, because we have to retire 118 of our current inventory. It's no longer useful to us. They're already taken out of the carts. Because they are no longer supported. They're old Acer products, and they're of no use for us in any of the programming and testing that we use those computers for. So we take out the 118 by the end of this school year, and that would leave us 372. The 30 devices in the budget are for breakage, when items break, and they do over the course of the year. Our IT person indicated that by 2026, all the current devices we have will be of no use to us anymore. So what you're not seeing in the budget is the fact that we have to discard 118 of them at the end of this school year.
And
so you got 136 new, you now have to discard 118. Seems like we're a little bit better off than we were.
Slightly.
So then why do we need 30 more?
Well, we're hoping the grants that we got this year were really a wonderful windfall to us. It allowed us to loan out devices to families who needed them.
Right.
We still have 40 of those devices in the hands of families, and not necessarily in our school inventory. And then ultimately, we're hoping at more as a tri-district or district level to one day hopefully come up to a one-to-one situation, which would be wonderful. So I feel we have a good, we're in a good position, and the 30 is simply for what we know to be wear and tear and replacement sizes that we will have next year.
Okay. In sections 430 and 431, found on pages 23 and 24, I feel like there's a number of, I'll just call them conflicts. 430 talks about maintenance contracts, and you've got 2 maintenance contracts for heating and cooling to the tune of 11 grand. But then there is a HVAC for 12,400, which is a new contract because of obviously the work that we invested into to help the ventilation system in the school. But it seems like if we bought this new maintenance contract, that the other one should lapse or no longer be in service because we've gone out and gotten a different one.
So, Mr. Parker, I'll try to respond to that. You've got a boiler system at Helen Keller, but you also have unit ventilators, which are individual units in the rooms. I'm not certain, but that those contracts may be referring to those 2 different approaches. I asked Susan this question earlier. Apparently, there was some sort of proposal made by my predecessor. I have to go dig that up. So I'm able to answer that question, not tonight, but once I dig it in. But it may have something to do, one's dealing with the boiler and one's dealing with the unit ventilators, but I need to confirm that.
One is indicated as automation control.
Okay.
Well, yeah, we have a very old BMS system that one of the pieces to the puzzle there is for the maintenance of that.
Yep.
It's a very old system. It's at its capacity. We can't add anything onto it. But in order to maintain it, one of those contracts is simply for that.
Okay. And roof and gutters, $15,000 a year. And do we actually sand and polyurethane the gym floor every year for $5,200?
Yes, the gym floor is should be sanded and polyed every year at that price. I checked that today. And our roof is 20 years old and it leaks a lot, Jeff. We call in the roofers quite frequently to repair leaks in various parts of the building.
Parker, I think the bigger question is, should we be talking about replacing the roof? Because generally roof warranties are for 20 years. If it's a 20-year roof, you may want to spend that money, but you got to go think of a long-term capital project. So this is, I think the school is saying, assuming we don't get a capital project, I have to do something to get the water out. But the board should probably consider doing a long-term capital project. I walked the school with Ms. Kaplan and the head custodian. There are several capital project needs in that building that we should think about for the long term.
Well, it's interesting because I think we are reaching the 20-year mark for the roof at Samuel Staples, and so that's going to have to be replaced. And while we're doing that, there's a parking lot in front of Samuel Staples that certainly needs to be replaced. And so maybe you put those three things together. We have a bonding issue, and we won't take any more time with that here tonight, but that's certainly something we should look at.
Do you have a sense where interest rates are at right now, Jeff?
Interest rates? Gee, they're not bad.
I mean, I don't know if anybody likes borrowing free money, but
Mr. Parker, I broached that subject matter with the first selectman and the finance director last Friday. So I did sort of put them on notice. We may be coming with some capital projects given the conditions at both schools.
I'm sure they both gave you a hug. Randy,
Well, they did not.
Not in COVID land.
Randy, I've dominated this. Why don't you go to your list?
Well, we covered a lot, and I think the spreadsheet is going to answer a bunch of questions. You know, we're going to talk about health insurance at some point. Not tonight, obviously. We're waiting on that, I guess. Let's see, year-over-year transportation. You had a 20,000 number, I think, Clarence, in there, but that's not the full first student year-over-year increase, right? Is that allocated to SPED or something else, or is that the full year?
Oh, you're on mute, Clarence.
Randy, that's the first student increase. Some of the SPED stuff we can't determine until we know who's going to be out of district. So you can't put a number in unless you know what the kid is. So that's just the contractual increase for first student.
Okay, terrific. Let's see. Let's see, curriculum, summer work. It seemed like it was a couple factorial higher than last year. Stephanie, I don't know, did you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I do. So there is definitely a formatting issue on the entire 1116 line. So you'll notice that the words don't even fit together correctly, and it's not even a matter of one line flowing on to the next. So the curriculum salary increase is really for a number of different reasons. So at the middle school in particular, they will not be looking to adopt a new math textbook resource, but the math specialist will need time with the math department, so 3 math teachers, to take the existing resources and review them and adjust the pacing guide. So they're considering some new supplemental resources. And so there's some additional money put into the budget to support that work. Additionally, in both schools, Last summer, we had intended to transition from Rubicon Atlas, which is a curriculum software mapping program that made our curricula available to the public on the website. For obvious reasons, that work did not occur last summer, but we still need to complete that project so that our curricula is made available to the public. So it's a transition from a software program that we paid an annual fee to maintain in a database to an internal, basically Google folder system that will provide the same thing, but it will take some hours to do that work. So those are the big changes. In addition to that, there is some money for summer work if we are ready by the summer to begin curriculum revisions in ILA and social studies with respect to diversity, equity, inclusion. If we're at the point where any recommendations from a consultant would have already been vetted through central office and our school leadership team, and then also our curriculum leaders will have had a chance to work with teachers to begin to draft changes. So I know that that is not what your document says because of the formatting issue, but that is in fact what we plan to do with summertime.
Do you know off the top of your head sort of that gross dollar difference from last year?
From last year, I do not. I do not have last year's budget in front of me, but I can get that for our next meeting.
If you tell me the lines or the numbers, I can tell you the total.
Are you talking about 116?
Yep, 116 is 7,575.
That's what we spent all last year on curriculum?
No. Last year was 8,100.
That's the increase?
The increase is 7,575 for 21-22.
So just given like the realities of COVID and the need to kind of accelerate, like there's going to be more kids who probably have learning loss. Are you concerned, or do you think there's a need for additional resources for curriculum mapping or training or resources for kids who are behind, additional paras, additional like reading specialists or support in those areas? I was just surprised not to see more there, just knowing we've made cuts in the past to, like in the middle school, for example, some math paras, or the younger grades, K1, 2, knowing, like there's probably going to be some reading loss. Like just wondering, are we under resourcing those? I know I'm the only person who asked the question ever. Are we not spending enough money?
So I was responding specifically to questions about the summer curriculum work. I think that in our budget proposal, there's always the possibility for a somewhat flexible use of funds. So if it seems that over the summer, the most urgent need is for our content specialists to work with our teachers to adjust the pacing guides in order to provide additional support as a result of end of year student assessment results, then that can certainly occur. With respect to additional staffing, the principals, based on our fall assessments, did not see a need to add additional staff. We have discussed providing some summer support, and that's something that we're very interested in pursuing, depending on how the next several months play out.
I think Jeff touched on this, but at Helen Keller, there was roughly 80,000 of capital improvements. Is that some of the things we already talked about too, the gutters and the other things, or is there something more significant in there?
Actually, those mostly represent same old that I've been trying to get into the budget for many years, with one exception, actually two exceptions. One is when you walk into our building and there's stairs down to the cafeteria, there's these rubber on each step, and they are coming up. The adhesion is just, what's the word?
Not adhesing?
Thank you, Randy. That's very good. I'll use that. And that's a kind of a tripping hazard. Our custodians are constantly trying to get that to stay down so no one trips. And then the other newer one that you haven't seen before is we're missing padding on 2 walls of the gymnasium. And they are the 2 walls behind the basketball backboards. And it would be really wonderful to have padding. They were not done when we did the renovation, not the renovation, but the fix of the gym floor because it wasn't covered by insurance. We only were able to do what was covered by the loss there. So I would like to get padding for those 2 sides of those walls. Other things are things I've put in before, and one of them is a requirement by 2025. It's some asbestos changing, something that needs to be repaired.
Randy, those 2 new items, Sue showed those to me. I would call those sort of safety issues, but I think that should be more of a conversation of that comprehensive plan, because there's a reason why the adhesives won't stick and the tile won't stick in that building, and until you solve that problem, you're just going to keep band-aiding it. So I think it's appropriate to be in there, but I think if we have a discussion about a more comprehensive plan, we might be able to remove it if we can build into a more comprehensive plan.
Yeah, sounds like moisture and water and things like that. So, yeah.
Spot on, correct.
Okay. Okay. I guess I want to double back to where Jeff was on the special education, because that's a tough one. I don't recall in the last 7 years of being here having that volume of dollars allocated to an unknown expense or an unencumbered expense. And I don't know if that 175-ish or whatever includes transportation, because I thought I saw somewhere in the budget like 125,000, 126,000 of transportation expense for, to and from outplacement location schools. So that one we need to probably have some more conversation about, not necessarily tonight.
Yeah, I think so too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've definitely not in the past there made it a habit of putting large contingencies into the budget. So not necessarily a question of a debate about outplacements, but how much are we going to put into the budget for an expense that we can't actually pin down.
Right.
And I think those dollar amounts are less than supported or appreciated, by the Board of Finance. Those will be the first things to sort of come under fire, especially when it's that large a number and will drive up the percentage.
I don't like to categorize it that way, Jenny. I think it's just, we don't live this every day. Jen does. I think it's just a conversation and an explanation.
Andy, I'm more than happy to go back and review the list of kids. I mean, again, like I said, the specialized process, like a speeding train, it changes by the day. But what I can do for the next meeting is, for example, I know rich families have what we call unilaterally placed their student, and have put us on notice. We have other families who just said, we're going to send our kids out, and they have not put us on notice. I'm only concerned about the parents that have put us on notice, because even if the child is outplaced by the parent, unilaterally placed, we're still responsible to convene PPT meeting to show the parents every year that we have a program and a placement.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I can certainly, for the next meeting, is to review those numbers again, because I'm sure some of those PPT meetings would have convened, and maybe their position has changed. So I can certainly do that for the next meeting, is to revisit those numbers.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
Sorry, I was just going to say, I share Jenny's sort of point of view that I haven't seen that before. And I think, Randy, you were also saying that's not something that you've seen before. So more discussion would be good.
Yeah, I don't think I was categorizing it in a bad way. It's just, it's an unknown number. And I've certainly heard from other more experienced members of the board that we need to be careful of that.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, that's fine, Jenny. I wasn't hoping you weren't throwing stones at the Board of Finance at this. We're not even, we haven't even started calling.
No,
each other.
but they definitely don't like to see contingency. I think the word contingency is the one that seems to raise eyebrows.
Sure. No, that's fair. You're 100% right.
They not good, bad, or indifferent members of the Board of Finance, I think, appreciate when dollar amounts are attached to actual expenditures and not projected, in case ofs.
Yeah, I use this example at home all the time. I give my son $20 for a hamburger and I don't get any change back. He's like, well, next time I'm hungry, I'm going to use the money. I'm like, no, we'll get the change back. And then we'll talk about next time you're hungry. So, okay. And one other thing totally off this topic now is just on electricity. One of my favorite things, the solar panels behind Samuel Staples. I'm pretty sure half a dozen years or so ago, or 5 years, when we put those in, we were promised free electricity as long as the sun continued to come up every day. And now we have a second set back there, and it still feels like we haven't saved a nickel on our electricity, but I'm wrong, right, Clarence?
Randy, first of all, I wasn't here, but I will say, if anyone told you you'd have free electricity and you're in Connecticut, not Arizona, you might want to take a second look at that. My understanding from my team here, we just in the last year have started to see some savings. I'm interviewing some firms now. They're going to do an evaluation of all three districts' electric utility usage. So they'll give us a better understanding. But my team here said that they just noticed a decrease in the bills in the last year or so. They said it took a while, but they have started to notice a decrease. I can't quantify that because they're telling me that secondhand, but I'm hoping to get some analysis done to show what type of savings we should be getting and whether the system is operating 100% efficiently. I don't know. Like I say, I've Kim showed me the facility, but I need to get some subject matter experts in to make sure it's set up and operating at its highest capacity.
Okay, but just for budgetary purposes, what have you done with electricity costs year over year?
What I would normally do, and if I had my team set up, I'd have these people I'm interviewing will provide me projections, like Kermit does our projections for workers' comp. They would give me projections based on our usage and what their knowledge of the utility rates. Right now, we're just having sort of dog ear and just say, like, we spent this much last year. Let's add a little factor, but I don't like that's not precise like I like to do it. So right now we're just doing a sort of flat line with slight growth in it.
Okay, so there's no savings from the.
I don't want to put it because I can't quantify it yet.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Yep. All right, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back the rest of my time.
If only. All right. Any additional questions? Jeff, I think there was actually a couple of items that were on your list that we didn't cover.
This is small change in the.
And it's fine if you want to skip it. I mean, I'm not saying you have to cover those. I'm just want to make sure you had the chance.
Oh no, no, I've never been bashful. I think I've covered what I wanted to.
Okay.
Talk about.
Thank you. Any additional questions, Gretchen, Jenny, or Devin? Or anything that's come up as we've do? Yeah, Jenny.
Yeah, mine are more just kind of general about the assembly of the information in the binder. Although I think that the documents that we looked at in the beginning really addressed some of my concerns. I've been finding it challenging, I guess I'll say, to kind of use a kinder word that expresses the frustration I've been feeling the last couple of days, with having salaries and everything all lumped together in sections. It just, kind of the way I wrap my head around it, I much preferred when it was separated out and salaries and people was all in one bucket, and I could look at all of the people, and then all of the stuff was separate. So it's been challenging to kind of shift perspective and sort of look at it, all special ed or all social, services or psychological services in that way.
Help's on the way. We just haven't quite gotten there yet. So we're getting there for you, but our technical issues have got us sort of behind schedule, but help is on the way.
And
Well, but I think you did with the first two spreadsheets. And I remember now that we had looked at that before. I had forgotten about that document, but that was definitely very helpful. And then what Stephanie mentioned just about, the way that things are broken down within lines and having a hard time tracking dollars with items. The other thing that I'm finding, again, kind of challenging, is within a section like, for example, maybe other payments, non-certified is not a good example, but where you have a section with, say, 10 or 12 items, and you can see that there's an increase over the adjusted prior year budget, but you don't know what the adjusted prior year budget was for those individual items. So let's say it's a lump sum about technology, and cameras are listed and earbuds are listed and iPads are listed, but I don't know, well, did the iPad amount increase? Did the, which specific thing is driving up that number, because the increase is in a lump sum. And in a couple of, in some areas, there are parentheses around numbers. And I suppose that's more of just kind of like a general formatting question. I apologize that I don't have a specific page, but I was wondering about the parentheses and also the highlighting.
Usually the parentheses would indicate that it's a negative number. Is that right, Clarence?
Yes.
Which I'm aware of, but within the context, I'll send that as a separate question.
The highlighting, I think, were the places where Clarence had made manual adjustments.
Exactly. In my email, I detailed the highlight. I wanted you to know where I had to make manual adjustments because of the
okay, I'm sorry.
We had on Friday.
You shouldn't be sorry. We're all victim to this this awful, sort of the process of upgrading, and having been through the process of doing upgrades and for many, many, many years. I do not envy Clarence.
Gina, I would refer you back. I sent an email on Friday.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed it.
It'll tell you exactly about the highlighting.
Okay. And then I think it's more of just sort of a general thought and comment. I know we're early in the process, but also a little bit, behind the game, time-wise and calendar-wise. And I think I speak in a safe frame here to know that we are probably not going to go forward with, between a 6 and a 7% increase. And that we're just going to need some really, at this point, thoughtful dig into sort of wants and needs. Even thinking about capital expenses, like, okay, we need to address the safety issues, but, I hate to say this, Sue, but, sort of what can we what can we kick down to next year, or possibly the year after?
Can I say something, because it actually relates to what you just said, Jenny?
Yeah, please.
The last week we were in school in December before we went on break, I became aware of a problem in the mechanical room. I don't know how many of you, when you've toured the building, have been in the mechanical room, but it's a room that the height of the ceiling goes all the way up to the roof decking. I didn't notice it until the last week of December. I had to go in there for something, and it was really dim. The lighting was really, really poor. So I spoke to our head custodian, who brought me up to sort of a decking area so that I can see above all of the equipment. And I learned that when they built the school, for some unknown reason, they put the lighting fixtures in first. So the lighting fixtures, of which there's probably 15, drop from the ceiling. Then they put in all of the big equipment, the 3 boilers, the water heaters and such. And then they put the piping for all of this equipment above those pieces of equipment. There's no way for the custodians to get the scissor lift up to replace the lighting. And what's happened now is we have 4 working lights. And now we have a very big safety issue in there. So I brought Clarence over there. I dragged Clarence over to our mechanical room. And we talked about this 100 different ways from Sunday. At the end of the day, he said, I need you to find 3 different electricians to come in and take a look at the situation and give us quotes to see if A, they should repair or abandon these lights that are hanging that we cannot reach, or put in new lighting. The third quote just came in. So I have not yet had an opportunity to meet with Clarence in person, but there's going to be a sizable addition to our 2600 431 account. The lowest bid that I received is 10,400.
To just add to Kim's statement, I need you all to understand the way this room is set up. If you can imagine, if you had a 2-story home with a basement, the floor is in the basement and the lights are in the attic. And there's a whole bunch of ductwork in between. So there's literally no way to get there. And I'm saying to myself, it's a design oversight is all it is. And we didn't notice it over time because the lights start going out. So now that we're down to 4 lights, it's not safe to be in. So you imagine a situation if we lost, let's say we lost heat in there and we had no lights, how do we fix the no heat situation with no light? So it's something we have to deal with. We just got to find a safe way to deal with it. And then that's why I asked Kim to get the quotes, because it's a safety hazard for our staff. And that room is the sort of the heart of the building, because if you lose heat, AC, whatever, and if you can't get in there, it's a maze of ductwork. And literally, these lights have to be almost 40 or 50 feet in the air. And there's just no way to get to them.
Any mountain climbers that live in Easton that we could engage to?
Well, let's get that fixed.
Yeah.
Our point, Kim and I discussed, to make you all aware of it, that we're trying to solve that, this year, but it's an expense that no one obviously had budget for. And once again, I want to keep repeating myself, but if we had a non-lapsing account, I could go and tap into it and pay for this expenditure.
Yeah. Okay.
2 other quick things that Jeff sort of touched on early on, but Clarence, we allocated, and I forget the dollar amount, a couple $100,000 for COVID expenses that weren't going to be reimbursed by the state, right? How much, Jeff?
350.
There you go. So in theory, that's still unspent because the 87,000 you referenced earlier, we're getting checks, or we're going to get reimbursed that. So as best as you can tell, that 350 is still unspent?
Randy, it is, but my understanding of the 350 is that you allocated post the budget being approved. So the budget didn't increase by 350. You just gave approval for us to spend 350. So it doesn't change the overall budget. And like I said, I wasn't here, but that's my understanding that you made that approval. Is that correct, Jeff?
Yes, that's true.
So it's not like you got an extra 350, because whatever you originally had planned to spend it on is still there. You just said, we authorized you to spend 350 for COVID-related expenses, which means it was going to be taken from somewhere else. So it's not an additional 350. That's already sort of baked into the budget.
Okay. Okay, and then I guess going back to Stephanie for a second, in a normal year, we skimp on PD. We sort of made an effort pre-pandemic to say we shouldn't do that. In this year's budget, in the 21-22 budget, where would you rank our PD allocation that you've asked Clarence to put into the budget for next fiscal year? How do you feel about that?
The priority for professional development is actually coming into the consultant line, which is the 330 line. And I am requesting that the board consider the hire of a consultant that will assist us in our work in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that consultant will be selected based on a review of several possibilities. And then once that person is hired, they will review existing ILA and social studies curricula, and they make recommendations to the administrative team, which will in turn, once we confirm that yes, indeed, we're in favor of any revisions, go back to a teaching team, including content specialists and teachers, to draft revisions, which will then go to the Board of Ed Curriculum Committee to review and consider. and possibly recommend to the board. So the PD part falls under the consultant line. So I know I just talked about possible curriculum revisions, but then the other part of that consultant's time would be to work with, first with our leadership team and really talk about what our needs are in the area of professional development for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Honestly, with the goal of moving forward in a manner so that all students, staff, and families feel that they are part of an inclusive community. So we're looking to hire a consultant to assist us in that work. So that's a priority. And so my budget includes $10,000 per school to support that work.
Okay, and that's higher than any other, that's more important than anything else you've seen the last few years that we need for professional
That
development?
is the priority right now. The math resource change, the contract will include professional development. So there's no additional line item for that work.
And for the math resource change, are we still working to get the company to provide a sort of tutorial for parents as well to highlight the resources available to them?
They will be working with our content specialist, and our content specialist will provide the presentation to parents.
Okay. When we think about the DEI work and the sort of consultants who come in, make recommendations that would be reviewed by the boards. If we then say, now we want to go take action and we want to start to adjust parts of the curriculum per that DEI work, you know, when we adopted this sort of Singapore math way of doing things, we brought in a consultant who not only showed the teachers how to do this, but that consultant did multiple sessions for parents. I remember being a part of it as a kindergarten parent. And I got a lot out of it. And I still feel like I'm able to partner with my students and my kids because I understand sort of the approach.
Yeah.
Would we consider doing something similar if you know, the opportunity to see the changes in the curriculum that we would recommend in the DEI space? Would we see an opportunity to make sure that parents can sort of have an experience of here is how the curriculum is changing to account for the DEI work?
Yes, absolutely. I think that until we begin the work, it's hard to provide the black and white and exactly what the parent presentation would look like, whether the parent presentation would be more connected to possible curriculum revisions, in which case I would suggest that it be headed by our internal staff and possibly include the consultant. But if we're talking about providing professional learning for staff members, certified and non-certified, and then extending a presentation to our parent community, then I would recommend that really be done by the consultant. And it's an excellent parallel to make to remind everyone that in the years when we were making more significant changes for math instruction, we brought a consultant, Dr. Yapan Har, to the district, and he provided professional development for teachers K through 12 over the course of 2 years, and also a parent presentation. Teachers still tell me today that time that they spent with him was the most transformational experience in their career as math teachers. So I do think that it was money well spent, and it was not something that we would do every year, certainly, but in those years it was a priority. So in a similar vein, I see the focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, both in terms of PD and for possible curriculum revisions, as being a priority for my part of the budget.
Thank you.
Stephanie, you've got 21.6 in curriculum in Keller, and it says 21.6 for science. Is that the work that didn't get done last year because of the COVID?
What you're looking at, Jeff, is a formatting issue. It's not for science. The entire section is 21.6, and honestly, the additional money at Keller, different from Samuel Staples, is really for math work. It's the same question that Randy had asked earlier. The formatting is just so wrong.
Okay.
So it really should not read, that line should read, it should read science, Spanish, math, STEM, Project Lead the Way, ILA, social studies, DEI revisions, so that's in parentheses, the changes would be the DEI revisions, then Atlas curriculum mapping software transition.
Okay.
That's what that section would read. So as you can see, it's just a jumble.
All right.
Yeah, to John's earlier point, the code writers for this particular stuff, I think are in a foreign country, so we've been having some issues getting addressed, how to get it corrected, but they are aware of it and they're trying to get it corrected.
Okay, so just I guess on the curriculum side, I've harped on this a little bit, and then we probably cut it out of the budget, whatever, in other years on other subjects, and I'm struggling with the deficiencies that we have right now that require this application. And maybe I'll ask the question in this way. Have we identified areas that we're going after in our curriculum spend this year that we're clearly deficient in? Said a different way, are we not deficient in other areas where this money, any money, money is fungible, should be spent as it relates to curriculum? I guess if the answer is we're good in all other areas and this is what we need to tackle, I guess that's an acceptable answer. But it seems to me that we've skimped in curriculum, we've skimped in PD. We've talked about that since I've been on the board day one. And I guess, so let me narrow it down as opposed to giving you, a square peg in a round hole. What areas are we deficient in? And what areas are we going after with this curriculum spend this year? And I guess thirdly, that's a two-part question. The third part is, John, what's the third part? I'll come back to you on the third part. No, well, yeah.
I'm happy to provide the detail, Randy. So if you're talking specifically about the curriculum revision work, the 116 line, our project Lead the Way teacher at Helen Keller, I hope to have the project Lead the Way teacher work with his colleague in Reading and also his colleague in Region 9 for 5 days over the summer. They are looking to build a more cohesive foundation for our students in Easton and Reading. So as they move to Region 9, they're building on a common foundation. The programs in the two towns are different. So the move to a common software use, a common approach has been really useful. And last year, we worked with a consultant from Sacred Heart to begin that work. I'd like to continue that work over the summer. Much of the other work is, again, to make that transition from the Rubicon Atlas software mapping program to an internal process. And then any curriculums related to the DEI work, again, are, I wouldn't say they are completely unknown or known at that point. This is where a consultant really supports it, because I'm bringing in an expert in the area in order to compare elements of diversity and inclusion within curricula, for instance, in reading materials, as an example, to make recommendations that we will consider. And the outside consultant might come in and do a review of our curricula and say, there are so many things to celebrate that you are doing so well. And then here are a couple of suggestions for you to consider. They might make more significant recommendations. I just don't know yet. And that's why I feel strongly about hiring a consultant to do that work with us.
I think it's a great idea to bring in a consultant. I think it's really hard when you are the person teaching the work, or like you're really close to something, to, have a really, an eye that is unique to be able to come in and look at something and be really critical. And so I think it's smart, especially in this space when you're looking at DEI. And it's not just what you teach, right? It's like the approach at which you teach it. It's having somebody be able to come in with different lenses, and really help teachers recognize how to teach things from multiple perspectives or frames. And so I think this is a place where, in my mind, bringing outside expertise makes so much sense, because it's really difficult work. And so I applaud the effort. I think it's a and it's not, to your point, it's not like they're going to find things that we're doing really well. I think lots of things that we do really excellently, and then just be able to provide additional support to help across the grade levels, because it looks different in kindergarten than it looks in 8th grade too. So it's like being able to help, you know, teachers kind of find ways to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion is just very different with littles. And I think it's great to have somebody, an expert, come in and do that work.
Also, somebody who knows where the landmines are, somebody who's done this work before. Right. You know, I've heard some horror stories of sort of people with great intentions going about executing, you know, one of these updates, and it ends up actually being totally counterproductive.
Yeah, it might be helpful to clarify as well. A couple of people have said, are you purchasing a DEI curriculum? And the answer is absolutely not. And again, this is where an expert consultant is so useful. You know, an approach to the question about how are you creating inclusive environments for staff and students and families might be, a quick fix would be, I'm going to find a product, I'm simply going to buy it, and then I'm going to hand it to our teachers to teach it. And we just feel strongly that that is not the way to go. We think that we do excellent work internally, but we certainly want to be guided by an expert in this area.
If I can rewind, just very briefly, for the PLTW in alignment with the sort of vertical alignment up to JBHS, as well as the alignment with Reading, I think that is a fabulous idea. And I think we get a lot of bang for our buck with that work. So here to that one. Sorry, Jenny.
John, I was just going to say, I'm really happy to, I mean, you know, the Rubicon Atlas, Project Lead the Way. I mean, these are existing programs, existing things that we want to make sure they continue and we see improvement. I don't know if I'm really speaking to what Randy was mentioning before, but I think we need to find a balance here too, because we have definitely been very lean with our money for PD and professional development. This is definitely a leap from allocations that we've put in place in the past. And I'm not 100% satisfied that, you know, we still hear concerns about math transition from the middle school to the high school. And, you know, I want to feel 100% confident that we're investing basically in, you know, in the basics, like reading, writing, arithmetic, math, social studies. You know, we're going to have kids who are going to have significant, you know, who may have needs coming out of distance learning. So until the solid foundational academics are 100% addressed, I think we need to find a balance between making sure that we are meeting just our basic educational needs of our kids and then moving into something like DEI curriculum. I was under the impression more that this was going to be more of a staged, a slightly longer process. It seems like it's moving faster than initially discussed. So I think we need to find a balance where, as far as the dollars that we allocate to it at this point.
Well, there isn't any doubt that dollars are going to be hard to come by. I mean, we're sitting here looking at a $1 million increase when a quick history lesson would tell us that we're probably looking at something a heck of a lot less than that. Maybe $600,000-$700,000, $600,000 to $700,000 less. Well, maybe that's 600,000 maybe would be the right number. But anyway, that's going to mean a lot of cuts, and it's going to mean a lot of choices have to be made. And I agree with Jenny to this extent. We've got to put the kids first. That's what we're, I think, charged to do. Provide them with the very best education we can afford. And so whatever we can do to make that happen, makes tough choices. You don't become popular with your neighbors very, very quickly when you do those things, but it kind of comes with the job, and I hope we all keep that in mind when we move forward.
So I would say that good DEI work is actually at the core of good academic work. It's social emotional learning, it's trauma informed practices and care, and in order to really educate the whole child, we have to approach children with a diverse perspectives that are inclusive. So while I definitely recognize there's an expense to that, I think we are better educators when we have this training and this ability to approach the work from multiple perspectives. And so I think the value is that it actually improves our ability to be stronger math teachers, social studies teachers, English teachers, science teachers, because we approach the work with a lens and a trauma-informed lens. And so that's why I think it's really valuable, and it's worth money. It's worth spending the money because it actually pays. When you talk about like, let's support kids, like to me, it is the work and it is supportive of kids. I don't think I don't see it as a trade-off at all. I don't think like choosing to do DEI work, which I think is a weird way to frame it, because like the work that we do, the work you do as an educator is in essence, right, DEI work. So, but it's providing a lens and bringing in an expert to say, hey, where are we good? Where can we do better? And providing that expertise, just like when we bring in a new math curriculum, right? We're bringing in somebody to say, here's these great tools, here's strategies you use to improve your use of those tools. We have great sets of tools. We have really great experts. I think bringing in an expert to say, hey, like, how could we change how we use these tools or strategies is best. It's good for kids. So I don't think it's a trade-off of like, we're choosing to do DEI and not be good at instruction. It's like you're choosing to do all of it and be good at all of it.
Well, Devin, I think, first off, I think you're right, but I think a way to get there is we need to, and I've asked Clarence for this as soon as he thinks he knows where we will finish up the year, and history tells me that we'll have an excellent idea by the first part of March. That if there are dollars that we can put toward those kind of endeavors now, as opposed to making it a part of next year's budget, which is going to be very difficult for us to do, that we should try to consider those options and thereby take some pressure off next year's budget by recalibrating the dollars that we will have at the end of the year and put those dollars to good use.
The fact of the matter is, I think any new expenditure of $10,000 per school is going to come under review and discussion, no matter what it's about. You know, no matter how much we agree with it or support it, it's a significant change from past expense in that area. And let's face it, I mean, we've been at the 11th hour having discussions about, $250 worth of postage. So to think that we're not going to spend some time thoughtfully discussing and questioning and examining, an additional $20,000 in an area where it hasn't been spent before, we just need to be ready to discuss it and prioritize.
I think to that end, Jenny, I agree. I agree with everything. I agree with you, Devin, too. It's usually we identify an area deficiency, and then you have a discussion about it and you come up with a plan. And that may have all occurred in the committee that I think was created back in the spring. I missed some of these board meetings, I guess, over the course of the year, but I haven't seen anything from that committee to sort of get us through the logical steps. But then maybe, unfortunately, maybe you have to spend money to know where you're deficient. And that's the challenge that we're all sort of talking about here. But I think we've covered this area and then some, so we can move on.
Agreed. All right. Any additional items? All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for a thorough conversation. That takes us into item 5, public comment. Again, for those who'd like to make public comment, if you can indicate using the participant window, indicate your interest by raising your hand in the using the participant tool. I'll give everyone just a moment. Okay. Oh, there we go. Yes, Allison.
Hi there, Gregory Farm Road, Easton. In regard to Project Lead the Way, I think it is a great idea to take a look at that program. I just think that it's only 1/3 of the year. So we're only going to make so much improvement there. We need this. I would personally think this is day in and day out. We have so much to make up for here. I'll also add that maybe you can do it in the schedule since we have, less time, instruction time going on. And we've heard from several people from several schools say that the kids are not behind and that the teachers are able to go through all the curriculum for the year. That's what I've heard. So I think we can actually increase the time that we do Project Lead the Way and engineering, the robotics, the coding. I think that there's, from what everybody said here, plenty of room to do this with. So any kind of professional development, et cetera, should really be weighted or equal, at least in this realm. Talk about things that we have ignored through the years. And I think we've heard some presentations also by people on here in past as well that talk about where are the jobs for the future. So I'll leave it at that. I hope we see something.
Thank you, Allison. Okay. It takes us to board member comment. Any board member comment? Jenny?
Yeah, I think it's early. I think it's only January and we really don't have 100%. I mean, let me just back up there for a second. I'm not the principal of the schools or teachers or Stephanie, but my, mom and board member understanding is that we haven't even assessed all the kids yet. So I think to say that everybody's fine and that there haven't been any impacts and we aren't going to need to address any educational needs, I think it's just way too early to come to that conclusion. I think we've had some promising early looks at student performance. Speaking personally, the biggest difficulties socially and emotionally and academically that I saw with my own kids have only really been evident in the last month or so. It was really that stretch before the holidays, following the holidays, and in the last few weeks where I've seen them struggle the most with the changes in schedule and the inconsistencies in the amount of contact time with their teachers. And the winter and the spring, those are long stretches of time, and we still have no idea what's going to happen. I'm very hopeful with the way that things are going that kids are going to be able to be in school and have lots of contact time with their teachers, but that is still not 100%, right? I mean, we just don't know what the next few months are going to bring. So I don't want to be too quick to say everybody's okay, let's throw money into something else. I want to continue to ask pertinent questions of our administrators and hear about the continuation of the testing of students who weren't in that first round in the fall, and then get a better, more pointed, conclusive look at where all of our kids are, K through 8, later this spring.
Thank you, Jenny. Yes, Jeff.
I'd like to thank Clarence for all of his work in preparing the budget information that we have received, whether I'm getting emails from him at 10:40 in the evening on a Friday night. Guess there's not much going on there, but letting me know that, okay, I've got some stuff and I'm going to drop it off at your house, and then literally come by the house and drop it off, was just really above and beyond, and I really do appreciate the fact that he did that. And I know there's still work to do to make the budget clearer and better, but it's a great first step, and I want to thank him for that. I also want to thank Dr. Harrison for his help, his words today before the meeting started. In a world where people don't take responsibility for what they do and say it's always somebody else's fault, I think Dr. Harrison did all of that, and I much appreciate his forthrightness and the fact that he would share those feelings with everyone here tonight. So thank you, Dr. Harrison.
Thanks, Jeff. Any additional comment? Yes, Devin.
Just wanted to thank the faculty leadership staff. Thank you for getting our kids back in school. I know that the numbers are a bit daunting, but I continue. I'm just thrilled that we're making this effort to keep kids in school. I saw like a revision to how we're contact tracing. I think, again, prioritizing trying to keep kids that are not in cohorts where kids have been infected in school, which I think is a great decision, and just continuing to remind the community about the protocols and the quarantine measures, all of those pieces, because I think as we continue to do those things as a community, we'll be able to keep our schools safely in session. So thank you to each of you for wearing masks, 12 hours a day, and, keeping our kids safe. It's definitely appreciated in this house.
Thank you, Devin. I'll close with, we've all bitten off more than we bargained for. I think we all sort of started this school year, and last school year with a certain expectation, and we all have a lot more on our plate than we thought we would. Definitely want to say big thanks to Clarence and Dr. Harrison, Dr. Pearson-Ugal, our building leaders for all the work they've done on the budget so far. Clarence jumped in the middle of a platform refresh for the sort of core accounting system, which is just ridiculous. And I don't know that it came up too much during the interviews. If it did, I think he probably would have said, never mind, I'm out of here. But he has been putting in all those hours that Jeff alluded to and going way above and beyond. And we're going to be benefiting from the hard work and insights that Clarence has put into this for decades. Like this is going to be a huge impact to our ability to have thoughtful discussion on these topics in the future. And I know we're at a particularly painful point for it not to be perfectly resolved yet, but it's getting there and will be much better soon. So thank you. Thanks for all of that. And for everybody putting in the tremendous efforts in central office right now. I also want to say thank you to our teachers, but I want to, make a point to say, please remember the protocols. Please remind your children about the protocols. I think it's really easy for the hallways to get a little bit less and a little bit less and a little bit less. And if everyone can please remind their children that the masks matter, that the distance matters, that's what allows us to stay open, please do that. It helps not only for us to stay open, but it helps to give our teachers a sense that everybody cares about their well-being as well. So I really mean it if you can just mention to your students the importance of all those protocols so that our teachers are feeling the support of the community as well. It would be much, much appreciated. So that's it from me. Jenny, did you have something? Go ahead.
Just something you said about the student protocols. Everybody is in such a tough position when kids are home because of illness and lost time at work, et cetera. I am not at all placing myself or anyone close to me on a pedestal here of judgment, but it is so important to heed the words of, the letters that we get from Kim and Dr. Harrison. If there is any question at all about an exposure or your child, we just have to remember that if we're uncertain and we send our kids to school, that we're potentially impacting so many others and so many other households where one disrupted household, whether it's fear of stigma or just being unsure, that we err on the side of caution with our own personal circumstances to prevent a larger impact either to another child or another family or class or the school at large. So I guess that's just my, kind of personal plea that we do the hard work to look out for each other.
Hear, hear.
Thank you.
All right, looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Jeff. Do I have a second? Thank you, Jenny. All in favor? Aye. Unanimously adjourned at 9:44 p.m. Thank you, everyone.